Spider-Man is one of the most endearing and enduring characters in comic book history. And unless you're J. Jonah Jameson, it's hard not to like this guy. He's the classic everyman, so whether he's a high school student or running his own company, he struggles with the same mundane crap we all do. Getting his homework in on time, managing the payroll, fighting supervillains, you know, your average Joe kind of stuff. With yet another Spider-Man movie, Home, coming our way soon, we thought we'd ask, who could kill this guy? Now, before you reel off a list of the countless characters who could simply melt his brain or erase him from existence, we'll be aiming to keep the fights relatively fair, so don't go suggesting Galactus, for Aunt May's sake, okay?
Bitten by a radioactive spider or a genetically altered one depending on your decade, Peter Parker obtains the proportional powers of a spider. His agility, speed and reflexes are enhanced far beyond that of your average human, and his strength is up to being able to lift around 10 tons, but this can increase in particularly stressful circumstances. Then there's the webs, and what kind of spider would he be without them? Although not on the level of a Tony Stark or a Reed Richards, Peter is a genius and created his own wrist-mounted web shooters which fire a very strong, sticky white substance that he uses to ensnare his prey. Insert your own teenage boy joke here. Insert. Finally, and perhaps his greatest skill of all, is the spider sense, a precognitive warning of danger, that thing all spiders are known to have.
Spidey takes up a pretty unique place in Marvel Comics. He's been around a long time with arguably the best rogues gallery and some equally impressive story arcs. Like the Clone Saga, Winky Face. Thing is, he's not seen as being top tier, particularly among other Marvel heroes. He has experience and great power, but he's still a street level kind of guy. So in this video, we'll be pitting him against similarly powered characters, or those with attributes that might give them the edge. So with all that bollocks out the way, who kills Spidey?
Number 5, Nightcrawler.
His name is Kurt Wagner, but in the Munich circus, he was known as... well, you know the rest. The incredible Nightcrawler is a mutant with teleporting abilities. He can only traverse to where he can see or places he knows well, but over the years he's honed his abilities to be very capable in combat. He's an expert in hand-to-hand and is quite the swashbuckling swordsman too. And despite looking like a blue devil, he's also a devout Catholic and an all-round nice bloke. He's not as fast or as agile as Spider-Man, and he's certainly not as strong, but that teleportation would definitely come in handy. As such, Kurt's initial strategy would be to stay away from the Wallcrawler's fists in the hope of frustrating him and possibly tiring him out. Kurt only has regular stamina though, so it's likely he'd tire sooner than Spidey. Despite the webs not being overly effective against Kurt, keeping his distance will only work for so long. He'd eventually have to stop pussyfooting around and getting close.
When bamfing, Kurt doesn't just disappear and pop up in another place, he actually travels to another dimension, a scary ass place known as the Brimstone Dimension. It's a bit like DC's Phantom Zone in that it's actually a prison, but instead the prison is a hellspawn, demons and the worst of the worst. Okay, maybe not that bad. If Kurt gets in close, he could teleport Spidey and simply leave Pete there. Maybe the webhead uses his wits to survive and eventually escape. It's an arc we'd like to see actually, but his chances are slim. Since that's not a direct kill, here's another option for our German acrobat. Kurt is able to selectively teleport parts of an object, i.e. without taking the whole thing. So what if he teleported Spidey's head clean off, like he did to Deadpool? It's a gruesome way to go, but hey, we never said this would be pretty.
Number 4, Gamora.
She's the one green-skinned alien Jim Kirk hasn't banged, but only because Spock got there first. He only gets the urge every 7 years though, so she must be gagging. On the face of it, this one's an odd matchup. Spidey loves dancing, while Gamora's not so keen. Also, Spidey doesn't often tangle with cosmic characters, though he has taken on 2 Heralds of Galactus, which was a bit silly. Quick side note, Gamora has received several upgrades over the years, making her far too powerful for the likes of Spidey. So for the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing on Gamora's original iteration, which is roughly on a par with her movie portrayal. Conveniently. This version's not as physically strong as the Wallcrawler, but she's fast and much better trained in hand-to-hand combat. Spidey would avoid the majority of blows, however, and cause problems with his webbing, but Gamora is one relentless mofo.
She was raised by Thanos and bionically enhanced to be the deadliest woman in the galaxy after all. Again, there's a bit of a mismatch, with Gamora being a trained assassin who's more than comfortable killing. What's to stop Spidey hanging back and avoiding confrontation altogether? He's more than capable. We're saying Gamora borrows one of Rocket's rocket packs to get in close and force the confrontation. But how does she handle the spider sense, we hear you cry? Well, she can't, but Gamora is no stranger to simultaneously engaging multiple well-trained enemies. Now, this ain't to say Spidey isn't, and to be fair, he's in his element taking on extremely powerful opponents, like the Rhino in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. But let's not forget that he has been bested by Kraven, so this bout essentially comes down to Gamora's superior training. Thanks to her speed and bloodlust, it's just a matter of time before Spidey is outfought and finds himself on the pointy end of the lady's blade.
Number 3, Ant-Man.
Ant-Man is one of those gimmicky superheroes. You know, a guy in costume with the powers of some crappy insect that... Oh, Hank Pym is your run-of-the-mill brilliant scientist who invents something that would change the world, but instead decides to join the Avengers. If I lived in the Marvel Universe, I'd be pissed at these pricks for not sharing their goodies. As we're sure you know, Ant-Man can shrink down to subatomic size, like a penis in a blizzard, but can also grow bigger, like a penis at a strip show, and has mental control over all ants in his vicinity, like a stripper at a strip show. But let's be clear, a regular sized Pym has no enhanced physical attributes that can hurt Peter. Even if he did get a punch in, he'd most likely break his hand. Not the case when beating his wife, however. I digress. Though his helmet offers a little protection, it's lights out if Spidey connects. But Pym's no idiot.
A straight up confrontation with Spider-Man is not going to end well, so we'd have to rely on his smarts with a heavily coordinated strategy. Though we saw Ant-Man surprise Spidey in Civil War, it's unlikely he could do the same one-on-one, i.e. without the multiple distractions we saw in the movie. So to replicate the threat, Ant-Man could use waves of his flying insect buddies, led by Anthony, attacking from all directions. There's only so many of these annoying blights as Spidey could web or evade before getting completely covered, and once Spidey's suitably distracted, Ant-Man could shrink down and inconspicuously enter Peter's body through any number of openings, and then get to work. Though Spidey has a pretty decent healing factor, Hank could begin pulling at random nerves and blood vessels and go to town on his vital organs, from which there's no coming back. There's also the option to simply grow to full size from within, or even use his Pym Particles TM to shrink Spidey down, then squash him like an ant. Or, you know, a Spider-Man.
Number 2, Carnage.
Cletus Cassidy, the bastard child of Venom, is a complete whack job. His kill streak dates back to offing his grandmother as a kid, so he's no stranger to settling disputes with Moida, which is a definite edge against the punch-pulling likes of Spidey. When it comes to taking lives, Carnage is Vlad the Impaler, and Spidey is Gandhi. Like his pops, Carnage has a couple of weaknesses, particularly loud noises and fire. But the symbiote affords another interesting advantage, namely the ability to evade Peter's spider sense, effectively meaning he could just sneak up and surprise Spidey anytime he wants, but not in a fun, happy birthday kind of way.
Carnage can use his version of the symbiote much like Venom's, with extra pointiness. His physical attributes are also suitably enhanced, plus he can shapeshift too. He's basically like the T-1000 with even less personality. And though he has the skills to creep up on Spidey, his biggest difficulty would be doing so without drawing attention beforehand. Imagine Michael Bay trying to resist the temptation to blow stuff up. Carnage has the same inherent urge with killing, and in a densely populated area like New York, he'd really have to stay focused. Provided he can keep a low profile, he definitely has the tools to kill Spidey.
Number 1, Human Torch.
Johnny Storm is kind of a dick. Young, impetuous, and hot-headed, pun intended. Johnny got his powers after being caught in cosmic rays whilst travelling in his sister's fella's experimental space rocket. Who hasn't been there? After crashing to Earth, Johnny finds he can transform his body into living fire, using the power to propel himself through the air and shoot blasts of intense heat, as well as being able to absorb and control nearby flames. Jono normally reaches temperatures of around 2800 Fahrenheit, but can go much higher if need be. With no extra physical powers beyond this though, such as speed or strength, there are outs for Spidey, but he'd have to use all of his genius.
Spidey and Stormy have had something of a rivalrous relationship over the years. They don't hate each other, in fact, they're friends, but occasionally they do butt heads. So there's a bit of history to draw from. On the face of it, the Torch should win easy peasy. If Spidey even gets close to him, he melts. But Peter has beaten superior opponents in the past using just his scientific smarts. For instance, he developed ice webbing in the comics, specifically to take on the Torch. Though it turns out his regular webbing is flame retardant too, meaning Pete could cause a few problems from distance.
There are limits to Human Torch's power too. He can only flame on if there is sufficient oxygen, and he has been doused with enough H2O in the past, so Spidey could use his intellect to outfox Johnny, but the Torch has flight and maneuverability on his side and can perform the Omni Blast, a firewall of such intense heat not many in Marvel can withstand it. least of all Spidey. Whether out in the open or an enclosed space, a blast of such magnitude will turn the spider to cinders.
So there's our list. Honestly, this one was tough to put together, so let us know in the comments if you have any suggestions for fairly matched Marvel characters who could take down Spidey. We'd love to know your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to appease YouTube's ridiculous algorithm by giving us a thumbs up. Also, why not check out our other kill videos? If you wanna, here's a couple of suggestions to get you started. Thanks for watching,